Real Virginia is proudly produced by the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. For almost a century, Farm Bureau has been a friend of the farm for all Virginians. Visit our website at vafb.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Real Virginia, a show about Virginia agriculture and the people who produce the wonderful local products we enjoy. Brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Here's a look at what's coming up in this week's show. Foreign workers play a vital role in Virginia agriculture. Chef Tammy has a mix of sweet and spicy treats this week, candied jalapenos. And aquaponics and hydroponics combine for a thriving Virginia food bank.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia, home in my heart always.
Welcome back to Real Virginia, everyone. We're coming to you this week from the Healthy Harvest Fresh Aquaponics facility in the town of Warsaw. We'll have more on how workers here have come up with an interesting combination to provide fresh produce for their communities. But first, many farmers say they couldn't stay in business without H2A workers. Elijah Griles has more on the important contributions these workers make to Virginia farming.
Fresh fruits, vegetables, and flowers fill Virginia tables every year, thanks in part to more than 5,000 foreign agricultural workers who come to the Commonwealth each year under the federal H2A visa program.
Because we are a seasonal business, getting a returning workforce was a real challenge. So that's when we started to consider, in about 2007, 6 or 7, the H2A program, which brings seasonal agricultural labor to the States. Quite honestly, it was just, a game changer and completely helped us to be able to scale our business.
Hicks and her husband operate Amy's Garden, an organic produce and cut flower farm in Charles City County. With over 100 different types of crops, her H2A workers that return each season are an invaluable asset.
For example, we have one gentleman who is now in his 11th season here, which is wonderful. He knows everything there is to know here and really helps to lead the more newer crew members. They come usually in April. The guys arrive, our crew arrives in April, and they are here until usually about the end of October when our season begins to wind down.
Virginia's utilization of H2A is also growing. There are over 5,000 H2A workers in an average year in Virginia. That number continues to increase and continues to show that H2A is filling that gap between workers that are available in our domestic workforce and the need that agriculture has for seasonal and temporary labor.
While H2A workers can come from over 30 approved countries, most are from Mexico. Eduardo Estrada Lopez is from Miacatalan, Mexico, and has worked at Amy's Garden for 2 seasons.
Pues a mí me ayudó él a venir para acá. Él me recomendó, él me habló que había una oportunidad de venir a trabajar. Yo le dije a él que sí, que muchas gracias, que sí quería venir. Ya él hablar con la patrona y ya yo venir.
While farmers in Virginia and across the U.S. benefit from readily available and skilled agricultural labor, workers like Lopez come for better economic opportunity.
Pues es mejor, un poco más de dinero. Allá en México es muy poco trabajo. A veces trabaja 1, 2, 3 meses y un mes no, y por eso es que quería venir para acá. Pues es venir a trabajar y pues tener algo, no sé, construir una casa para mi familia, para tener, no sé, unos animalitos y cuidarlos cuando uno regresa para allá.
An employer is required to pay at least what's called the adverse effect wage rate, which in 2024 was $15.81 an hour. They're also required to pay for housing, for transportation from the home country to the farm and back, and for all transportation to and from the job site. So if you think about the incentives for workers, let's use Mexico as an example, the adverse effect wage rate in Virginia per hour is greater than Mexico's general daily wage rate
Like Lopez, Elfego Perez Marin is working to benefit his family back in Mexico. He is in his 11th season at Amy's Garden.
Allá en México, a veces uno no tener un terreno donde poder hacer una casa. Y aquí cuando para venir acá tenemos que trabajar aquí para poder comprar y hacer una casa allá, porque prácticamente ya no es posible porque pagan muy poco.
Marin says that working far from home is difficult, though. He has a son who is going to be 2 years old in November. The Saunders family in Nelson County has utilized the H2A program to expand their orchard and nursery business.
We started in the H2A program in 1998. We had a meeting then to talk about expansion in our business. We did not have the labor that we needed in order to expand.
The family contracted just 10 H2A workers in 1998, but now employ 100 workers each season to cultivate and harvest their nursery and orchard crops.
We're required by law to hire any U.S. worker that's qualified for the job. So if we have a U.S. worker that walks in, we have to hire all of the U.S. workers that apply, but we have very few applications every year.
The number of H2A workers nationwide increased by 65% from 2017 to 2022, reaching 371,000. Saunders cites a high rate of return as an indicator of the program's success for both farmers and workers.
We have about a 90% return rate from year to year. We've got, I think, 5 or 6 men that have been here 25 years. I'm third generation. We've got 5 of members of the fourth generation that are coming into the business, and we're trying to continue this family farm, and we couldn't do it without our friends from Mexico that come up here and help us harvest the fruit. And so it's a generational thing, not only for us, but for our workers from Mexico and our friends from Mexico, because it's a generational thing from them.
From apples and pears to vibrant cut flowers, the fruits and vegetables Virginians enjoy are made possible by the dedication of H2A workers. By supporting local farmers, Virginians also support the families of these hardworking individuals. For Real Virginia, I'm Elijah Griles.
Immigration and access to foreign workers have long been a major political issue for American farmers. However, agricultural workers who enter the United States through the H-2A temporary and seasonal visa program are legally recruited and brought into the country to supplement our own farm labor workforce without displacing American workers. Most farmers say their operations couldn't succeed without their help. Debate continues in Washington on how to expand the H-2A workforce and streamline the process of hiring them each growing season, while assuring that these workers return to their home countries in a timely manner.
I'm Mark Viette. Coming up on In the Garden, we're going to talk about fall blooming anemone. Stay with us.
Farming is a rewarding way of life, but it can also be full of challenges. If you or someone you know is struggling, call or text the AgriStress helpline at 833-897-2473. It offers 24/7 access to professionals who can support someone in need and help find mental health services in your community. Please make the call, because healthy farms depend on healthy farm families. That's 833-897-2474.
Fall is the perfect time to propagate plants in your yard. Mark Viette has some friendly advice on how to grow and be kind to your anemones in the garden.
Fall blooming anemone are native to Asia, native to Japan, and they're a slowly spreading, naturalizing plant. These anemones behind me have been here for about 30 years. It really gives you great fall color. Usually September, October, some of them even bloom as late as beginning of November. You can propagate them both in the fall and in the spring. And in the fall, it's really easy. So you just come in find a nice plant. We're going to dig this one here. There is a couple ways to propagate them. I usually shear them. So I'm going to come in and shear them like this. Then you dig the clump. And you shake it. Now, in some cases, you could literally pull them apart like this and then plant them. Now, if I were going to plant them, I would put the soil level about 1 inch above the bud. You'll see buds up top, and I would put the soil level probably right about there. You plant them about 24 inches apart, just like this. I like to plant them in groups of 3. So here is one that I already dug. So I'm going to come in here carefully. And this is a plant. So that's going to give me a triangle. But there's more on this that I can divide. But there is another great way to propagate them in the fall. You can use clay pots. What you do need to do is put a hole in the bottom. I like this one here because you know, this is left over from getting food. And I like to put 3 holes. You can even use a drill. And the way I'm going to show you how to propagate them now is easy. So on the younger plants, here you can look at a tiny bud. I'll put the knife behind it. You can see that white little bud right there. So what I'm going to do is come in and cut that root. Which has that tiny bud right there. And then I'm going to kind of wrap it like this. And just put it in the soil. And then cover it with a little bit of soil like this. I'm going to water this. And I'm going to, from now on through spring, you know, maybe put them in a little humidity tent or inside, and you're going to get new plants by spring. And you're going to take it out of the pot and plant it in the garden. And you can make hundreds of anemones. And now if you live in Richmond or warmer areas, you're going to want to plant them in shade. But here in the Shenandoah Valley, from Roanoke all the way up through Lancaster, you can plant them in full sun. So fill your garden with naturalizing anemones. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
Email your garden questions to viette@viette.com.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Coming up on Heart of the Home, candied jalapenos. We hope you'll stay with us.
Every spring and fall, Virginia farmers and other motorists nearly collide on rural roads. Sometimes these collisions can be dangerous or even fatal when a car traveling 55 miles an hour suddenly meets much slower moving farm equipment. The odds of a collision shoot up. Farm equipment operators are required to display a slow-moving vehicle emblem when they're on a public road. When you see that, slow down. Give them plenty of space to do their job. This message brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation Safety Advisory Committee.
It's October, and if you plan on hosting or attending a Halloween party, Chef Tammy has a unique treat that tastes as good as it sounds. Candied jalapenos from the heart of the home.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Welcome to Heart of the Home. Today I want to show you guys a delicious recipe. This came from a friend of mine last year. We both were growing a phenomenal amount of jalapeno peppers in our garden, and she has this recipe for candied jalapenos. Really kind of shocked me to hear the word candy with the jalapeno. Jalapenos can be spicy. I've grown them for many, many years. Some years they're spicy, and then the next year they won't be spicy. And sometimes they're red, and sometimes they're green. Red ones can also be called Fresno. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to actually boil 3 cups of sugar with a cup of apple cider vinegar. And then we're going to mix in some turmeric and some garlic and some celery seed. We're going to let that come to a boil. Whenever you work with this recipe, you can use garlic powder if you choose, maybe about a teaspoon. I prefer the fresh garlic, but with the whole cloves, you always want to make sure that you have your ends cut off, the hard end. Turn that burner on. Get that going. Now, when you work with peppers, they can be very spicy. I typically will glove up for handling the pepper itself. I don't for handling my knife. So I am going to go ahead and do that so I don't make the mistake of touching my eye afterwards or anything. And then also too for peppers, when you work with them, the spice or the heat is actually in the vein of the pepper and not necessarily in the seeds. But the whole goal of this recipe is for it to be spicy. So we're not going to take the seeds nor the veins out. We're simply going to slice them somewhat thin, roughly, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Or so. And if they're a little thicker, that's fine. Don't worry about that. I've already sliced most of what we're using. If you leave the peppers on your vine when you're growing these, if you leave them on there long enough, that's when they will turn red. Same thing with regular bell peppers. So we're going to put our peppers in this bowl until our syrup comes to a boil. When I did this last year, my kids fell completely in love with this recipe, and they would take the peppers out and put them on pizzas and really anything you put something spicy in. So this is going to be boiling here in just a moment. But at the end of the season, once we've gone through all the peppers, you are left with this delicious honey. This is so good. It's a little thin, but I love it. I use it in place of any honey when I want something spicy. My favorite flavor profile is sweet and spicy together, so this is right up my alley. Once this comes to a boil, we want it to go down to a simmer for about 5 minutes before we add the peppers. We'll return it to a boil and again simmer for another 5 minutes. Then we'll take the peppers out, put them in our mason jars, and then we will boil the syrup again for another 5 minutes and then add the syrup to the peppers. All right, so our syrup has simmered for about 5 minutes or so. Now we're going to come back and add our sliced jalapenos. We're going to let that return to a boil, and then we're going to let it simmer again for another 5 minutes. All right, so our peppers have simmered for about 5 minutes. I'm going to take a jar and remove just the peppers, not the syrup. Keep in mind, ever how many peppers you choose to use would determine the size jar. We've got a smaller one here, a medium, and then we've got our large. This was about 1.5 pounds of peppers to about 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, and a 1/4 teaspoon of celery seed that we let simmer with 3 cups of sugar and a cup of apple cider vinegar. We're going to just remove the peppers. I do highly recommend that you kind of tilt back a little bit, because if you breathe this in, you might start coughing. I'm certainly going to try to avoid that. And then we're going to return the syrup to another boil and let it simmer for the last 5 minutes. And then we're going to pour the syrup over top of the peppers. And that was our last simmer of our syrup for the peppers. We're going to pour the syrup over the peppers, very carefully, of course. Now, I like to let this cool before I actually pop the lid on it. We're not canning these like your standard canning procedure, but I do like to let them cool a little bit before I pop that lid on. These will last a good month at least in your refrigerator, but for as delicious as they probably won't last that long. We love to do these, like I said at the beginning, we love to do these on pizzas. We put them on tacos. Charcuterie boards, absolutely great idea to put them on a charcuterie board as well. And peppers, these jalapenos, they will grow well into September, if not the 1st of October. There you have it, candied jalapenos. I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from the Green Kitchen. Join us next time on Heart of the Home.
Recipes from the Heart of the Home can be found on the Virginia Farm Bureau website at vafb.com/recipes, as well as on Chef Tammy Brawley's website at greenkitchenrichmond.com.
Jalapeno peppers are just one of more than a dozen varieties raised on Virginia farms and in backyard gardens. In 2022, chili peppers and other specialty peppers were raised on 86 acres on 300 Virginia farms. Peppers are from Central and South America, so it's no surprise they require high soil temperatures to thrive. That's why many home gardeners don't see mature peppers until very late in the growing season. Smaller, so-called snack peppers are so popular that Virginia Tech researchers are studying ways to raise them year-round in greenhouse settings.
One of Virginia's regional food banks has found a way to grow vegetables, raise fish, and educate children on the Northern Neck at the same time. And they're spreading their success to every part of the state. Located in Warsaw, Virginia, Healthy Harvest Fresh is part of the Healthy Harvest Food Bank.
This facility is very unique. It's the only one of its kind on the East Coast that we're aware of, and that encompasses a food bank and an aquaponics system.
The aquaponics portion of the facility was conceived about 5 years ago. Today, it's part of a thriving Healthy Harvest food bank that had humble beginnings.
In the back of a pickup truck. A couple of guys are driving to Richmond and bringing back as much food as possible for pantries in the lower end of Lancaster County.
Balderson says a survey of nearby residents inspired her team to focus on growing fresh, healthy produce.
32% had someone in their household with type 1, type 2 diabetes, or some other health-related dietary issue. And that's where our agricultural program was born.
Aquaponics is a food production system that uses fish to produce the nutrients in order to grow in a traditional hydroponic system, where lettuce, cucumbers, and other produce are grown in water versus soil. Waste from the fish is filtered, and the nitrogen that remains provides the nutrient base that the plants use to grow.
The fish, they're doing an excellent job to provide that nutrients. A lot of times in fields, it's planted so many times that it's absorbed all the nutrients that's there. You don't have that rich in nutrients. You don't have that really, really rich green. Whereas in here, I mean, the fish are doing all of that for us.
This is what planting looks like in an aquaponics program. Lewis takes seedlings that have sprouted from a container bed to a raft with 18 holes for the plants. Lettuce can be frustrating to grow outside since it is susceptible to changing temperatures.
Like a field-grown lettuce, it can be one hot day it wilts and it's more of a sour lettuce, whereas in here everything's temperature controlled. The water, the temperature stays the same pretty much all the time.
Lewis says he and other workers are constantly monitoring changes in the water or air temperature. making adjustments as necessary.
You can taste the freshness. I know it sounds funny, but I mean, you can taste that it was harvested within the week. You can taste that it's full of, water, it's full of nutrients.
Workers here say fresh produce doesn't just taste better, it's better for you.
Fresh produce has a much higher nutrient content than produce that's been harvested days and weeks ago. But once produce has been harvested, that nutrient content immediately starts to decrease.
According to Feeding America, a national group that tracks hunger, an estimated 1 in 9 Virginians face hunger, including 1 in 7 children, for a total estimate of 704,270 Virginians experiencing food insecurity. That's nearly 8% of the state's population. Healthy Harvest Fresh considers itself first and foremost to be an education center, where the aim is to show young people the benefits of fresh versus processed foods.
If children establish a culture of eating for wellness at an early age, there is a much greater chance of them not growing to adults and suffering with those nutritional-related illnesses as adults, and having to combat those and suffer through those nutritional-related illnesses as adults.
Healthy Harvest Food Bank serves as its core the 6 counties in the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula regions of Virginia. They work with 36 partner agencies and serve 11,000 individuals each month. Last year, they distributed over 2.6 million pounds of food, which equals over 2 million meals. And they also distribute additional food to every other part of the state. For Real Virginia, I'm Burke Moeller reporting. We're so glad you could join us to celebrate all the bounty Virginia has to offer. From the kitchen to your home and garden to our beautiful wide open spaces, we're proud to say that this is Real Virginia. For everyone from the Virginia Farm Bureau, thanks for watching. Make it a great week.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia, home in my heart always.
Every year, 500 people in the United States die in an all-terrain vehicle-related accident, and another 1,000 people are seriously injured. Sadly, many of those victims are children.
Being able to have fun on an ATV, being able to use an ATV in a workplace environment, there's a lot of unknowns. Number one tip for riding an ATV is definitely wearing a helmet. You think about the opportunity to overturn an ATV, imagine your head the same density as a watermelon. And how easy it would be to crack. One of the biggest things that we always push for anybody we train is always make sure that you have a good quality helmet before you ride. Parents are the leading example of what children tend to follow when they're out using an ATV on a farm. So we want to make sure that our parents are very knowledgeable about safety and equipment and being able to teach their children the correct method to operate ATV safety, especially with the age. Age is important.
This message brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau Safety Advisory Committee.